Today we'll be starting trigonometry. So when we have trigonometry, we are going to be working with right triangles. There's 3 different trig ratios that we're going to be learning. And if you see here, those are sine, cosine, and tangent. So you see the relationships here. We have sine is opposite over hypotenuse. We have cosine as adjacent over hypotenuse. And we have tangent as opposite over adjacent. Now, to remember these ratios, we use what we call SOHCAHTOA. I'm going to show you why that is. So, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. So we get SOHCAHTOA. Okay. So you might say, well, how do I know what's adjacent? How do I know what's opposite? How do I know what the hypotenuse is? Well, let's talk about it. So we look at the angle that's, we'll say, in question. Now, we know automatically that in a right triangle, the side across from the right angle is always going to be your hypotenuse. Always. So you might want to start there. You might want to say, okay, I'm going to start with the side that's across from my right angle, and that is my hypotenuse. Then, I think it's easiest next to find the opposite side. The opposite side is always the side directly across from that angle. And the next one would be adjacent, the one that we have left. Now, this is because the angle, we'll say, is adjacent to this side here. So let's take a look at some questions so we can better understand this. I always personally make sure I write SOHCAHTOA at the top of every page, so this way it's easier for me to determine the ratios. So here's my right triangle. They tell me A is a right angle. They tell me BC is 13, AC is 12, and AB is 5. So they want me to find the sine, the cosine, and the tangent of, we call that theta. So the sine, if you look up at the top here, is opposite over hypotenuse. So first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to label this whole triangle here. So I always recommend labeling first. Across from my right angle is always my hypotenuse. Remember, directly across from that angle is always your opposite. And the one that we have left, the one that's next to my angle, is my adjacent. So the sine is the opposite over adjacent. Opposite over hypotenuse. So we end up with the sine of theta equals 12 over 13. So that's how we would do that. So now, if I wanted to find the cosine of theta, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So the adjacent is 5 over the hypotenuse, which is 13. And last but not least, we have to find the tangent. The tangent of theta is going to be opposite, which is 12, over the adjacent, which is 5, so the tangent is 12 over 5. All right, so that's really it. That's how we would do these trig ratios. Now, if you take a look at number 3, you do have to draw your own triangle, which isn't too bad. So we have a right triangle, ABC, and they tell me C is 90 degrees. So A, B, C. AB is 17, CB is 15. The rest you can do on your own. So that is it. That is how we look at our identifying our trigonomic ratios. So remember, we're working with SOHCAHTOA. My recommendation would be first label your size of your triangle, and then it will be easier from there.